I heard somebody talking about spinning wheels. Who's rebuilding the spinning wheel? Was that Garold?
Several years ago.
Oh, okay.
Ernie's also said that he's rebuilt or built from scratch a couple of them.
Have you ever done any one of those drop things, you know, with the sort of T-shaped ones for spinning where you do drop spinning on them?
I have not.
Okay.
You mean a drop spindle?
Yeah.
Like a freewheeling thing, no wheel. You just spin it on the ground, right?
Well, you don't spin it on the ground. What you do is you end up you spin it in the air, and then as your thread spins off, it lowers by gravity.
Oh.
Yep, drop spindle. That's Susan always starts out the group on a drop spindle because she understands spinning, and we call X and Z twists. One goes one way and one goes the other. And
that sounds like my marriage.
Yeah, and I've made incalculable numbers of those drop spindles. So.
Well, it's essentially a top, but this oversized top, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all
Pretty much.
But inertia is good in it. The more inertia it has, the better.
So did you try? Obviously, that means that the outside of the wheel at the bottom, do you make it just one thickness, or do you ever make it sort of like a more of a disc so that you can have all the weight outside on the outer rim?
I make them all about that big around, like 3 to 4 inches, and maybe an inch thick.
Okay.
Tapering out so that they're pleasant with no sharp edges on them, and then I just make them in a jig I have for my lathe, and then I have a press fit with a piece of dowel that I pound into it.
Cool.
All right, well, it's 10 o'clock, so we might as well start out our Lancaster County Woodturners Coffee Hour. And John is still in the hospital, so he's asked Doug and I and Dave Sloan to take up the slack here. So first out of the gate today, Kai Kochi in Bad Nauheim, Germany, has a PowerPoint show on use of sandblasting equipment to add texture to turning. So Kai?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for introducing me. Actually, the little PowerPoint presentation that I showed, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was just about the objects I did. And I have a dedicated presentation about the sandblasting unit, which I'm going to show you. But as John said, we will do it at a later point. I didn't prepare it for today, so I have only got the German version. Well, that should be no problem. I will explain it in English, try to translate everything into English. There might be a word missing once in a while, so maybe Ernie, you can help me with the right English or American term, but I think we will get along, so I'll do my best. Right, you should be able to see my PowerPoint now. Is that working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So, concerning sandblasting equipment, there seem to be 2 different ways to do sandblasting or to construct a sandblasting cabinet. One works on a suction principle. With suction, you have an air blasting gun and a pipe that leads to a container where you have your sandblasting material inside, and then you supply the gun with air, and the sand is sucked into the gun and mixed with the air and then blown out at a high speed to do the sand blasting. The problem, and that's how most of the sand blasting equipment works. The problem for an amateur woodworker like me is that you need quite a big compressor to do that. Big in this case means that the compressor needs to be able to deliver a lot of air. And so the compressor needs to be capable to deliver this air. It's ideal to have a big tank. I found 400 liters. Sorry, I didn't convert that into gallons, but it's quite a big tank you need, and because otherwise your compressor will run all of the time. It will get hot, and at a certain point your compressor will decide I've done too much work and switch off, and you have to wait some time till you can use it again. So that's this principle. It's good if you have a big compressor with a big tank, and that takes you back, or in Germany it costs around maybe 1,000 euros, which is similar to $1,000, maybe a little bit less.
Kai, 400 liters is 105 gallons.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the amount of air, the 400 liters, this compressor should be able to deliver per minute. I know in America you have a different unit for the airflow or the amount of air per minute.
Kai, in US terms, for most sandblasting units, you need, for industrial use, you need 10 to 15 cubic feet per minute delivered to the tool at 90 pounds per square inch.
Okay, yeah, so that's what you want then. Thank you. And there is another way to do the sandblasting, and it's a sandblasting unit that uses pressure. You can see one here. They are manufactured in Europe by an Austrian company called Logiplast. And what these do is the following. You have a pressure vessel or a container. Just go back. That's the blue thing here. And the sand or whatever you need for use for sandblasting is filled into this container. Then this is put under pressure. So here's your compressor. You have a foot switch to switch on and off the air. And then this goes to your container. So in the container, you have a mixture of sand and air, or the sand is under pressure. And then it is pressed out down here into a hose. And at the end of the hose, you have a nozzle for sandblasting. And this can be used with quite small compressors and works really well if you have small objects. The drawback is that the mixture of air and sand has to pass this T-junction here, a little bit of metal pipe, and then your hose. And of course, the mixture is abrasive, and you have to exchange the T-junction and the hose once in a while, because it's kind of worked on the inside, and then at a certain point the hose is too thin. But the hose isn't very expensive.
Kai, question: what is the
Yes?
diameter of that T junction? Inside diameter?
6 millimeters, so it's about 1/4 of an inch.
Thanks.
And here you can see the equipment, and that's the nice thing about this unit. You can use standard material, so it's no special parts. The pressure vessel you can buy on eBay. In Germany, it's about 35 euros, I think, or 40 euros, something like that. Should be a similar price in dollars in the States. And then you need these junctions and connectors and a little bit of this pipe and a metal tube. So besides the vessel, you can use a foot switch, which makes operating more comfortable or easy. And also it's a good idea to separate the water that is in the air with this water separator, we call it in Germany. And it also shows you the current pressure you have. Because if the air is moist that gets into the container, then it might happen that your sand gets lumpy, and then this kind of blocks the hose, and then it won't work anymore. Okay, that's the hose, and this little thing here actually is the nozzle. That's maybe another drawback of the system. The nozzles are quite expensive. I've just bought some, and one is about 45 euros if you buy them in bulk. So some people came together and we bought a larger amount, and then we got a good price. Normally they are around 70 euros. Okay, so that's the construction of the box. Some basic woodwork. And here you can see the vessel inside the box with the connections made. This hose down here goes to the teeth junction. So on the other side, there's this little pipe here where the sand air mixture is pressed out. Here you can fill the container, and that's the finished unit. And to be able to shake the sand a bit inside, or whatever you use for sandblasting, I put it on a kind of hinged tray so that I can move it up and down. I don't know whether that is really necessary, but as I was doing the woodwork anyway, and I had some pieces left here, I put it on there. Yeah, and then this is the connection to a conventional cheap Chinese sand blasting box. And I just added a connection here for the pipe, or it's not a connector, it's kind of where the pipe goes, the hose goes into the box to seal that. And on the other side, there's a plastic nut as well. And if you open this, you can take the whole hose out, including the nozzle, which is handy for me because I need to put the unit aside if I don't have it in use, as my workshop is too small to have it permanently set up. Also, it's a good idea to have a possibility to clean the air inside the box a little bit. So I added a hose for my shop vacuum, which I run at a very low speed just to clear the air. And I have a separate bag for the shop vacuum where I collect this dust that I kind of extracted here, because the sand inside can be used again. So I just empty the bag and then use the sand again. Also, I added some more light here inside the box. They had one light at the back. I added 3 more lights around it. So it's a better visibility inside the box when you work. And in use, you put your hands into these gloves that are on the inside through these openings here, and then you can do your sandblasting. And that works pretty well. And I'm happy with it, because I can use my standard compressor with this unit and do small projects. Yeah, here is a look inside the box. And the foot switch. And that's—
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Kai, when you say small projects, it's not because of the compressor, but because of the actual size of the box that you've made, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's okay for maybe bowls of 10-inch diameter, 12-inch diameter, something like that. Maybe even a little bit bigger if you angle it a little bit. But it's not.
It's the inside dimension of that box, not the compressor. That's the limitation, though, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Another little drawback with a small box is, but I think that's a general problem with these small boxes, the sand collects down here, and when you angle your nozzle in a way that it blows towards the bottom of your box, the sand will be kind of moved inside the box or will be blown through the box. So with the bigger units, they have kind of a funnel at the bottom that directs the sand into a separate container. And then when it falls down there, you don't kind of blow it around inside your box. So you have to be a bit careful here. Yeah, so that was.
Kai, what is your sand medium?
It's glass, glass kind of ground into very fine particles. You can use other things, like in Germany it's Garold, the same material you use for grinding wheels, very, very fine ground. Yeah, Ernie?
That would be carborundum powder.
Yeah.
We call the material you use media, and the three main medias used in sandblasting are sand, carborundum powder, glass beads, which will take rust off but not scratch excessively. And we also use walnut shells here for cleaning things, like taking grease off of things or cleaning things off without harming them. So walnut shells is another media. You can buy all these medias through Harbor Freight, and you can also buy a cheap $20 blasting gun if you just want to try this without too much expenditure.
Okay, thank you, Ernie. Yeah, the stuff I use is not glass beads, but it's glass shreds or something like this. So very sharp very fine, but with sharp corners.
That would be much better than beads, which will frost the wood, but it won't really make any texture.
Yeah, and I'm still at the beginning, so I just finished this a few weeks ago, and I'm still experimenting. But the fellow woodturner I built that together with, or he built a similar unit, he ordered some sandblasting media, and I'm still trying out different stuff. But the glass shreds, the very fine ground ones, they seem to work fine. Yeah.
Kai, do you recycle the medium by like putting it into a bucket of water to float off the wood?
Actually, I was told with the glass shreds, for example, that you can use them 5, 6, 7 times, so several times at least. So I just put them into a sieve, and if there is a kind of big wood splinters or something inside, I just sieve them off, and then I use the stuff again. The only thing is the particles or the dirt that's in there must not be too big, otherwise it will block the hose. But it's recycling is no problem. Yeah. So and that's the first bowl I did. I think that's the one I showed, and then I painted it to make it, or dyed it to make it a bit more interesting back. And I can show you one more piece that I did, but I haven't got a photo of it. I just hold it into the camera. I stopped the PowerPoint and just get it. See whether you can see that. I have to hold it. So that's meant as a piece of jewelry. Oh.
Hold it closer to your face.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's hard to see.
It's hard to see.
Put it down.
Maybe if I tilt it a little bit, you can see the texture on top. So that is done by sandblasting and painting. I could take a photo then and maybe show it at the end of the session again. So the photo will be better than holding it into the camera. I'll do that later on.
Question for you. Have you tried any masking so that you mask off certain areas that you don't want to sandblast? And if you have, what is the material you use for masking?
Actually, I haven't tried a lot of this. With these holes here, I carved them first before the sandblasting, and I didn't want to blast the inside, so I just used ordinary masking tape, kind of cut it into a very small strip, and then put it inside to keep the sand out. But that should be possible. I know another wood turner, and she does a lot of sandblasting. Actually, she came up with the idea first, and she bought the original Logiplast sandblasting unit from Austria, and we just kind of rebuild it because we thought it is cheaper if we build it ourselves. She does a lot of masking, and that works fine. Yeah. And she uses masking tape, and sometimes what is that used for? I think it's used in airbrushing normally, so there's some kind of masking material that you can use there, and she used that for her sandblasting. And masking tape is also fine.
Thanks.
I even tried some of the I think Ray recommended that to me, the frog tape, the green frog tape. I tried that as well, and that works fine as well.
Thank you.
You can buy sandblasting masking medium. It's about 20 thousandths of an inch thick, and it's sold in a roll by by the yard, by the square foot. It's used in monument trade, making tombstones and such.
Okay. Yeah,
You
that's
just peel the
interesting.
back off it, stick it.
Mm-hmm. I'll have a look for that. Yeah, thanks a lot for the tip.
Also use a piece of tire inner tube as a quick and dirty mask, and usually obtain that pretty cheaply.
Okay. Right. Any more questions? I can send the link to to Logiplast, who produced the unit commercially, to John, and then maybe he can put it into the information that he sends off after the morning coffee hour, and then you can have a look at their website if you want to.
Thanks, Kai.
Thank you, Kai. Once again, terrific job, and we really have grown very fond of you being a member of the group. And,
Thank you.
I am continually amazed at the people that have come into this coffee hour. I wandered in around somewhere in the 20s, I believe, and we've really had people from all over the world on this show. And there's also some long friends in it, one of them being Dave Sloan, that's here today. And of course, John Kelsey. I knew him when I was writing for Fine Woodworking, when he became the editor, and the very first editor of Fine Woodworking. I also know Dave Sloan when he was an editor for Fine Woodworking, and he did a review on the Commodore lathe. And even though he mounted the motor upside down for the review, it sold a lot of lathes, which proves the adage that I don't care what you say, just spell my name right, that any publicity is good publicity. But then started writing for American Woodworker, which was a startup magazine published in Tennessee. And the owner was Jim Jennings, who owned a trophy shop, and decided to start a magazine just sort of out of the blue. And his wife kind of corrected the English, or no, he had an English teacher doing that, I think. His wife sold ads, I believe. But at any rate, he sold that magazine to Rodale, and Dave Sloan became the editor, and my new boss. So we had a long history in that magazine. So I'm going to let Dave say a few words about that here, and encourage him to sort of wash old laundry, I guess.
Yeah, wash old laundry is about the size of it. No, it's Ernie and Kelsey and I go back a long, long way. And John Kelsey hired me when I was about 32 years old as an editor for Fine Woodworking magazine. And I moved from New York City to the wilds of Connecticut. And we had a great time. And I was sort of the guy there among the editors who was supposed to be covering the wood turning scene. That was really an interesting opportunity because I got a letter one day from this guy in Ireland. His name is Liam O'Neill. And he said, you know, there's all kinds of interesting stuff going on here in Ireland. We have an Irish Woodturner Guild. And I persuaded Kelsey to put up the money to fly me over there. So I met a lot of people, and that trip introduced a lot of the stuff that's sort of been taken for granted today with, you know, the Irish grind on gouges and many, many other things. They were pretty well organized and pretty innovative. Anyway, I had a great time at Fine Woodworking working for John, and we've kept in touch all these years. And, you know, Ernie was involved. And as he said, I reviewed his lathe and botched because the motor was upside down. But he doesn't tell you that the instructions were bad, that the motor was supposed to be mounted the other way. Anyway, I moved to a company called Rodale, which is in Pennsylvania. And Rodale was mostly known for organic gardening and men's health and bicycling and a lot of stuff like that. But they made a lot of money selling woodworking books to people, books of plans mostly. And one of the guys who was a vice president got the bright idea to buy this woodworking magazine from Jim Jennings. As Ernie said, he ran it out of the back room of his trophy shop in Hendersonville, Tennessee, if I remember. And the English teacher in town corrected the grammar, and his wife sold the ads. So they paid a grand total of $240,000 for this black and white magazine. And they said, hey, you're working for us. Will you run this thing? And I said, oh, the world needs another woodworking magazine, like it needs a hole in the head, because there were about 5 well-established ones at that time. But, you know, I didn't have a choice. So we started with that thing. Ernie, do you have the picture of those early ones?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
So
can you get it up there?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And
I'm technically challenged here, so I'm relying on Ernie.
So there
There.
are some early covers.
Yeah, we started this thing out as a black and white magazine, and it was an oversized thing. And we're talking about 1987. I don't know if any of you even remember this stuff, but you know, I had a network of wonderful people that I knew from Fine Woodworking who came over. Ernie being one. That cover on the left of the chessmen was done by a very good friend of mine who's deceased, Rudy Osolnik, who was a wood turner who was down in Tennessee, or Kentucky rather. So yep. we tried to make a magazine for thinking people, and you know, a lot of the woodworking stuff is, you know, golly shucks, let's just bang a cute few boards together and make something you know, today. But we wanted to explain both the why and the how, and we tried to do it with a little bit of artistic flair, and that was what we did. So we ran this magazine in black and white for a few years, and ultimately the pressures of the market made us go to color. You have a picture of that color one, Ernie?
Yeah, I just brought it up. It's with Mario Rodriguez on the cover, and it's a really nice shot.
You have it there?
Yeah, it's up.
Oh, I don't see it. I'm still looking at the black and white one.
We're still seeing the black and white one. Let's.
Do you see it now?
No.
Yeah.
Well, let me stop the share, and then
It's no big deal, Ernie, if you can't find it.
all right. Yeah, it's on the same screen, and when I bring it up in front of the other, it won't show. So
anyway, we had to downsize the magazine and shift to color, and we ran this thing for about 10 years. And I think we did a lot of good for a lot of people. I think our mission was to spread the word about woodworking and wood turning specifically. We covered a lot of turning. Ernie wrote a lot of stuff for us. He did a wonderful article on croquet balls. Do you still have that thing, Ernie?
yeah, I think I can bring that one up. And
Yeah, if you can bring that one up.
I wrote from Jim Jennings found me somehow, and I wrote from the issue 1, and I did the Q&A column, and the magazine at startup, we didn't get any questions, so I made them up as we went along.
Oh,
So
see if you can get that picture up, Ernie.
I will. Here we go. And so
There. Oh, it was a spread. That's half of a magazine, half of a 2-page spread. And
So what's this photograph showing?
well, if you look, if you turn, here, go back there. Go back to the front picture, because I think Doug was excited there.
No, I wasn't excited. I was asking you.
No, he's all excited there. Look at it. Look at him. Anyway, the article is on turning croquet balls, and it caught your attention, didn't it? But what's interesting is we had a female art director, and she knew nothing about woodworking rather, and she would come up with really unusual and creative layouts for these things. So this got a lot of attention, but once you look at the ball and you realize you want to turn a croquet ball, Ernie has really described this process really, really well here.
Yeah,
Very
we also showed how to make a mallet too. There's making the mallet.
Oh, I don't remember that. Oh, wow.
Yep, and you came to my house and did the photography on the spot.
I do remember that.
We did in my basement in those days.
I do remember that. I don't know if this article is available online, but I might. I think if anybody wants it, we could probably arrange to send a copy.
And you can see.
Look how young he was.
That my hair was some color other than what it is now.
Well, you know, this is just a really good article, and considering that we just covered turning balls a couple of months ago here on our coffee hour, it's well worth reading. So anyway, nothing good lasts forever, and Rodale decided to sell American Woodworker in 1998 because they thought that woodworking was not part of quote unquote healthy active living. I tried to make the case that, you know, it's healthy active living for a lot of people, but they wanted to focus on sports and that kind of stuff. So American Woodworker was sold to Reader's Digest, who wanted to merge it in with Family Handyman magazine. And it's never been the same since. And finally it was sold again to somebody else, and they pulled the plug on it, and it doesn't exist except in our memories. But we have some good memories. I think we did a lot of good for a lot of people, and we had a lot of fun.
We did. And
had a lot of great friends too.
They were healthy on days. Now, thank you for that walk through memory lane, David. It was fun. And
Can I make a comment, Ernie? My first article that I published in American Woodturner was edited by John Kelsey.
Oh my!
That was on making a threading jig. He was very helpful.
John's a great editor.
He is a terrific editor.
Good, great to work with.
I've done many articles and 2 books under John.
You know, one of the things I'll pass along one little tip that Kelsey taught me years ago. He said, when you're doing how-to writing, he said, first tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well,
I have a comment or two, but that brings back memories to me. I've been doing woodworking since about 1960. I've been turning pretty regular since 2000. But I used to pick up wood down at Groff and Groff lumberyard down here in southern Lancaster County. And they had a couple of bins with old magazines in them. And I used to pick up American Woodworker out of there quite often and read it.
Oh, that's good to hear. Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad we did some good in the world.
Yeah, I always enjoyed that one.
Thank you.
I see Kai raised his hand here. You got a question, Kai, or comment?
I just wanted to show the piece that I held in the camera earlier on because the quality wasn't good. So I can do that now.
Well, before we go, let's finish off the other discussion, okay?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I was just going to ask Ernie, have the questions changed now that you're not creating them anymore?
yeah, they actually, that's an excellent query, because a lot of them, I could just pick something up my students had at that time had asked me, or, you know, a customer had asked, so on. But yeah, I don't know, questions sort of run through a cycle, and as do magazines. About every 5 years, a magazine fairly well turns over its entire readership. So you can recycle an article. You don't do the same article, you write it over, but you can recycle an article about every 6th year in the magazine you're writing for.
Well, thank you. Any other questions or comments for the guys?
I certainly enjoy hearing some of the history, some of the guys going back in the old days.
But we only told you the family-friendly stories.
Yeah.
I understand that.
We didn't tell you about the late nights at the trade shows where they.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, we did these we did these big American woodworker shows across the country. I forgot about that, Ernie. We had about 4 or 5 of them. And the first one, we pulled 12,000 people at a venue outside of Philly. And that was just great. We brought in turners from Ireland. We turned the world's largest wooden bowl. I don't know if anybody was aware of that. We brought in my friend Stuart Mortimer from England, and we bought this enormous frigging lathe. And we bought a fir log that was 8 feet in diameter and 16 feet long. And every time we touched it, it was like $3,000. Anyway, we brought this thing east from wherever it was out west, and we turned the world's largest solid wooden bowl and got in the Guinness Book of Records. And we got all kinds of free TV, and it was fun.
That was at Valley Forge, I believe.
Well, we did it at several ones. We actually moved the bowl around. We didn't finish it at the first show we did, but we finished it at Valley Forge.
Yep.
In Pennsylvania.
At Valley Forge, Stuart used a tool that looked like a harpoon, and it actually lifted him off the platform he was standing on and flipped him over. It was pretty scary when it happened, but we was once he was okay.
I think the final bowl finished out at 7 feet 2 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
Is it still a record?
One where they turned on the axle of a tractor. I forget what that was. They had used the axle of a tractor as a lathe to drive this big block.
We actually found a special company in the United Kingdom that was making an enormous lathe, and we brought that lathe over.
Yeah, it was in
I
Scotland.
forget the name. What, Ernie, do you remember the name?
In Scotland, the people that made it. The guy that made the lathe was there in Kilt.
Yeah, he's gone. He died, by the way.
Yeah, it's a VM something or other. I think Craft Supplies still sells it. I had to sell one for a friend here in Cleveland who had died, and his wife needed to get rid of it. And the only way we could get rid of it was give it to a trade school.
That bowl that you're referring to, the large one, is it still a record, or is somebody else made one? Because I know Ron mentioned about the one on the tractor wheel I've seen on YouTube, but that guy actually made a piece together. It was segmented. It wasn't just a single piece of wood.
Yeah.
As far as I know, Doug, ours is still the largest solid wood bowl. And you're right, the segmented one was larger in diameter, but I think we still hold the record for the largest bowl out of one piece of wood.
Well, it's time where any member can kind of show their work and what they're working on. So I'll move on to anybody that would like to share something they're making or have made. Please show us. Dave Sloan.
Yeah, I've sort of sat in the back for a long time, and I don't just talk about turning, but I do some turning too. And here's a walnut bowl that I did a couple of weeks ago. It's I don't know, about 1 foot in diameter roughly. But one of the things that I try to do here is I'm not terribly clever, and I usually don't stretch for technique, but I'm trying to work on form and design. And one of the things I stole from one of my Irish buddies is the idea to actually undercut the rim of it a little bit, so that when your hands get on it, you actually have a very solid edge, and it feels really sensual and really nice. So that's one of my latest ones.
Nice proportions, so on.
That's something I always try to do, is put a little bit of an undercut lip on the inside of the bowl. It gives you a nicer feel when you pick it up.
It really does.
And then a curve on the surface of the top of the rim adds a little bit to it also, I think.
Yeah, this is curved slightly, very, very slightly.
All right, Kai, now would be the time for you to show that piece of jewelry that you sandblasted.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it. Just share the photo. And
oh yeah, perfect.
there you can see the sandblasted surface first I did some carving to get these little kind of volcano-like shapes, and then I masked the inside here of the holes, and then I did the sandblasting, and the total diameter is about 2 inches.
Very nice.
Yeah, and I put it into a frame just to make it look a bit more interesting.
Is
Okay,
that black, the black, is that paint?
Yeah, it is paint. It's acrylic paint
Okay.
that I put on it. And that's also paint. It's gold acrylic paint. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just stopped the sharing again.
All right, others, who else has something to show us?
I've got Mike Peace highlighted.
Yeah, I did this threaded box. The strange, interesting thing about it, I used chefware kits. Craig LaPiana, I helped him do the documentation for this strange jig that is a double start thread, interrupted thread. It seems it's a goofy idea, and I don't think he sold many of them, but the machinist that convinced him it was a great idea. But it's you cut the threads 6 threads per inch, then you have this jig that offsets it 180 degrees, and then you start the other threads, so you wind up with 12 threads per inch. Then you come in with a end mill and cut away 4 sections, so it slides all the way down and then locks with not even a quarter of a turn.
Can we see the inside of the lid?
I got a little bit of texturing, but I didn't put any gilt cream on it, so it's pretty difficult to see the texturing.
That's a interrupted screw thread, and it's often called a bayonet, and it's common to the breeches of cannons.
Yes.
And cannon lenses.
Yes, exactly. I was in artillery. I should have known the terminology, but that's been many years ago.
Well, I was artillery myself, so yes.
Few are privileged.
They load from the back now instead of the front, you know.
Yeah.
And I have the hearing aids in both ears to prove it.
Yeah.
Mike, wouldn't that same design, the interrupted thread, work with a single thread?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
The main reason for multiple starts is to get a faster lead on the thread. And it is common to camera lenses. Leica built some that were in the 20s through the 60s.
It's fairly common on capped pens as well to have either 3 or 4 start threads on the pen.
Bruce.
Okay, so as one of the newer people who have stumbled into this, I thought Ernie said that so well. I had started by sharing my new experiences in hollowing, and I've kind of combined that with some Cindy Drozda IRDs, and I've come up with this.
Ooh, that's nice.
Ooh. Thank you. It is figured mango. I started with about a 3x3 spindle, and the vessel itself is 6 inches tall with an overall height of about 12 inches. And Cindy's design really focused on continuing the curves into the additional pieces. And what I tried real hard to get is the base continuing the curve down to near 0 and doing somewhat similar pieces on the top where the curves continue themselves. And it's been an adventure. This is the second one I've tried, and I think I'm getting there. I still want to work more on the sharp entry cut on the finial, getting that a little better defined there. And my OG on the bottom isn't quite what I desired either, but I think it's getting there.
Well, you did a wonderful job on that. What really catches my eye is the fact that you continued the curve down around the bottom and up around the top, but you made that very interesting little break there with that sharp angle and that sharp edge. That just a really fascinating thing. If you had just smoothed that black section into the other, it wouldn't have been as effective. So wonderful design on that.
Yeah, that's actually part of her design. That is a separate collar. The finial is actually removable, but that it creates that piece at the top, which I think is very clever. But it's not my design.
Really nice. Well, yeah, take credit. You made it.
Very well done. Yeah.
It really flows nicely. It's actually a spindle, and it's very common in spindle turning to have them come out. It looks like a rubber band is around one side of the junction or the other, and it's undersized. A common place that's problem is turning columns is that just under the capital, you sometimes have a shouldered bead that defines the necking of the column. And it's very easy to look like there's a big rubber band around the column. So great job. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Any other persons? Anybody else?
I saw Garold had a wave his hand here, and I've also got one from Judy Stone. So,
Okay.
Garold, you're up. I'll just highlight you for Garrett, and we'll make the spotlight you. There we go.
Thank you. The other night, Ron did a 3-sided bowl, and so I also have made one. And I really appreciated his technique the other day. I didn't follow it exactly. I made mine by just knocking 2 corners off and putting them between centers.
May we see the bottom?
Done on a faceplate, or not on a faceplate, but on a chuck, and you can see it. I had a minor accident there, not only with my finger, but also with the bottom of the bowl. Tore out a little corner, little edge.
Cool.
How big of a cube did you start with?
Ron, I started with, I think it was 5.5 inches.
Yeah. Yeah, I've made some 3s and 4s, about 4.5 is as big as I've done, but I'm gonna do some bigger pieces. Makes a nice little unique bowl.
It does, very unique.
Thank you, Garold. I'm going to spotlight or share my content so that I can show some pictures that Judy sent me. And we've got show and tell, and we have Judy.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it, Doug. So, Garold, this is what you missed by not calling me last week. I was so excited that I made this lidded box out of cherry from our property, and Mark taught me how to inlay the top with abalone.
We have 3 pictures. Do you want to?
You can see it there. And then we used acrylic to cover the abalone so it doesn't catch on anything and to protect it. And there it is. And as I mentioned, Doug, there's this tool whose name I don't know that Ernie or others might know that I always have trouble with lidded boxes fitting the lid properly and making the mortise. And John Kelsey had showed a way of grinding a tool that makes fitting it much more easy to do.
I'll tell you what, we'll get
and we have that tool, Doug, if anybody wants to take. Mark brought it back up. So it's angled at the end.
Like a skew angle.
What?
It's like a skew angle, a little bit on the nose.
Yeah, it's kind of maybe a 3-degree taper in it to square.
And it's tapered on the side as well, isn't it? So you can cut using those get into the corners.
Right.
So
it's been very handy.
What was your name for it, Ernie?
Well, it's a variation of a V scraper, actually. and you grind
Okay.
it more or less angles, whether you want to turn a less than 90 or more than 90-degree angle. But that would be excellent for fitting box lids because you could creep on it. Another good trick in fitting a box lid is to, I usually turn the lid first and then turn the tenon to fit the lid. And what I do is put a little chamfer on it and see if the lid will go over the chamfer. If it won't, I just remove that distance, chamfer it again, touch the lid to it, and when it starts to be going over the chamfer, then I go to really slow, careful work. And often the fit of a lid on a box is about one dust width, and you can go past it pretty fast. So slow is stays the course. But all these are tricks, but you need to turn 40, 50 boxes before you really get this down to where it's easy.
I've been too frustrated to do that many, but this really helped a lot.
Robert Sorby and others sell that tool, and generically they just call it a box scraper.
Yeah. Yeah. They used to, every set of tools back in Sears and Roebuck, they had a simple V scraper that you could rearrange the V on as you sharpened it to get what you wanted. And now I don't know of any set that comes with a V scraper.
Arbor Freight. They have two different sets, and each one of them has a V scraper.
Really? Oh, well, there you go. There's where you can get one. I always joke that the difference between a professional and an amateur is an amateur points out all his mistakes to you. So with that in mind, I'd like to share a mistake I made here recently. Is can you bring me up on screen, Doug?
You are.
All right. I'm making this present for my daughter who's in England and is getting married in June, ostensibly June 19th, but due to the pandemic, the wedding has been put off 3 times. And so I am waiting to inscribe it with the date before I send it. But at any rate, I've made quite a few of these platters, and I put the leaf of the tree in and then the common and the Latin name. And I turned this once, I burned the whole thing in with my wood burning tools, and I had left the double S out of Saccharum. And so I had to do it over again, and I had to mount it back in the lathe, take a 30-second off of all this, resand it, and I would have been done at 1 o'clock that day, but I got done at 5. So it happens.
It happens.
You do things very differently when you're dealing with your daughter.
Yeah, don't spell her name incorrectly, Ernie.
Thanks, Ernie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, Forrest Gump was right.
Yeah. But at any rate, anything else we can show here?
I've got something.
Please.
This is Bob Mathers. I also have a question after I showed this to you. Roy the other day had mentioned something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Roy had mentioned something. He had done something with poplar, and I got the feeling that he was happy with that wood. I had a huge tree topped in my backyard with poplar that I had mentioned anybody who wants some can come and get it at my house. But why was it difficult for you to work on it? I've just made a few pieces here and I've got some drying out. What was the difficulty with poplar?
Who was the one that
Roy had mentioned that when he presented something the other day at our evening meeting, the monthly meeting.
Yeah, Roy Jensen. What was your difficulty with poplar? We're not hearing you. If you're not muted. Are you still with us?
I had laminated 6 pieces that were an inch thick and 11 inches in diameter, and everything was coming along pretty well. And I was down before we opened up this morning. I was down to finish the bottom of it, and it had come across very, very beautifully and wonderfully amazing and fearful. It shattered and went all over the place.
Okay. All right. I made these at a request, the candle holders for my sister-in-law. Those were poplar. She sent me a picture and I tried to duplicate that. The two on the right are ash from a tree that was in my front yard. The small one there is poplar. And talking, I think you mentioned earlier, Ernie, about being a novice, talking about your mistakes. I had a piece that I had and it was cracked. I didn't dry it out like I should have. I've got a lot of pieces drying now, but I'm going to keep this one. There's just so many mistakes I want to pass on to relatives for later. The last one was a request from my wife. She wanted one that looks like to me like an old jug from for rum and so forth. So that one's cherry. That was also from my front yard as well. So that's what I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Axel has also raised his hand. Are you wanting to share something, Axel?
I just wanted to add to Ernie's conversation about making a mistake. Last year, I belong to a large national organization, dog training organization, and I offered to make a bowl for them for a chapter was getting started and trying to buy some land. So I made this large bowl out of really, really old English walnut. It was about 12 inches, 14 inches across, about 6 or 8 inches deep. And on the bottom, I put the chapter's name, burned it all in, and put the year and the date of this convention that they were having. And I sent a picture of it to them, and they said, "Oh, we forgot to tell you, we changed the year from 2020 to 2021. And meanwhile, it was all done. Now, here I am. How do I just get the change of 2020 to 2021? Well, there was only one way. Take the whole rim off, and burn it all in again.
Yep.
So that added about 6 or 7 hours to it because it was big, and I made a point to go extra deep in the burning. So I had to try to remount it, take the inside of the rim on the bottom, make it deeper, take off like 1/8 of an inch, and then reburn it all. I was not a happy camper. The only good thing is they actually auctioned it off, and it brought $575 for them.
Cool.
A good friend of mine who I hope we get on the coffee hour one of these days is Al Sturt up in Vermont. And he turns exquisitely thin bowls. And a lot of them are given as wedding presents. And he had enough of them over the years come back that they wanted the names removed and new names put in the bottom of it because of divorce, that he started making his bowls thicker in the bottom so he had room to turn the bottom down a little without destroying the bowl. So,
I'll keep that in my mind.
I have a granddaughter coming up. I'll have to keep that in mind.
That sounds like an application of putting in medallions with a magnet on the back.
There you go.
it might be good to put a dotted line in case of divorce.
I just made a deer horn whistle for this girl. Now she's been engaged to this guy for 10 years, and they were going to get married this year. So she had me make the whistle, and I usually burn in on the antler. I burn in initials, and she wanted her initial. I mean, her initials are ML, and I said, and I also made one for her fiance, and his initials are DH. And as I called her up, I said, "You sure you don't want me to leave space for if and when you get married?" And she looked at me, she says, "Now that's a really good idea." So her initials are M, L, and up on top is H. I said, I can burn over the H in case you guys decide to wait another 10 years or don't do it at all.
You know, you've presented an interesting question. How many people on the call have got projects in their shop that they got frustrated with and set aside for a later date, and 10 years later you still haven't picked it back up again? I see a few nods. I think we should show some of those projects sometime. Just bring the ones that you never finished.
Well, the other problem is your skill grows in the 10 years, and you look at it and you think that isn't even worth putting time towards anymore. I've got ones that have sat for 20 years, and I finally checked them out. So it happens. Well,
I remember.
We burned a perfectly good hour again, having great fun here. And I really appreciate all of you being here and the chance to.
And since we know that John will look at the video, and no doubt we should all say wave and say, hi, John, get well soon. So,
hey, John.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Get well soon, John.
Get well soon.
Get well soon. See you next week.